It's always interesting to meet with like older students that you had from the past. So one of my students, he went to college and he decided to go for like mechanical engineering. And what was interesting about it was his like he's always been one to like give me more information. Like he starts explaining what he's studying and what tests he's about to take, and I'm like, you lost me. Like I have no idea what you're talking about. And he just keeps on. But he started telling me about this, like different metals. Like what he's studying is how they'll make steel beams for a structure, and they make a set amount of beams, and they have to cool after they're superheated and they form. They have to be done in a certain amount of time, because if they're not, then they can't be used in the same structure or same part of the building because they're not stressed the same, because they'll cool down at different rates. And if you have one steel beam that's not properly tested and then with the same kind of tension, then what will happen is that part of the structure will be weak. And so for me, it was like this interesting topic where he's telling me of this different tension. I was like, someone's watch is going off. Different types of tension that happens. And so what I've learned is that engineers do this with all kinds of structures, not just metal, but they do it with concrete and whatnot, and they make sure that it's going to hold in the final days. What happens is some of these test beams, what they'll do is they'll actually compress it underneath a drill press of some sort, or and it'll push down the metal, or they'll stretch it. But what it shows is that under force, the flaws within the metal are exposed, and shows also its strength. And so you can see its weaknesses, but you can also see where it's strong at. And they take those annotations and they put in their computer with all their algorithms, and they can say, okay, this can be used for this type of building. Yes, these are by themselves weak, but if you put them together, they're actually much stronger. And the same thing like concrete. You can just pour concrete, super weak, but if you reinforce it with steel rebar, now you have something that can bend and move, and it's actually stronger. The thing is our faith is no different. See, when we're put underneath the pressure, when the tensions are pulling us in different directions, sometimes when God is testing us, it's going to show us our flaws. It's also going to show us where we're strong at. And today what we're going to be talking about, what we're going to be looking at, is we're going to be looking at Daniel from chapter 7 and how he was a man who was tested throughout his life. We already talked about him a little bit last week, but he's tested throughout his life, and at this point he's somewhere around 80 years old, and he's still being tested by political schemes, unjust laws, and people issuing threats against him. And so his faith is tested. You want to know what his response is to all of these threats and all of this tension and trials? It's faithfulness, it's consistency, it's courage. In the end, what we see is that God is ultimately glorified. And so I'm going to open up to our passage of Daniel chapter 6. I'm going to read a small portion of this. So I'm going to start in verse 3. And it says, "Then this Daniel became distinguished above all the other high officials and satraps, because an excellent spirit was in him. And the king was planned to set him above the whole kingdom. And then the high officials and satraps sought to find a ground for complaint against Daniel with regard to the kingdom, but they could find no ground for complaint or any fault, because he was faithful, and no error or fault was found in him. Then these men said, 'We shall not find any ground for complaint against this Daniel unless we find it in his connection with the law of his God.'" Already we see this starting to, like the beginning. He's an official that is respected. He's excellent. He has the spirit inside him. But what we're going to see in today's sermon is hopefully how when all these things are against him, and all these things are against us at different times in our life, that sometimes our best action is to kneel anyway. And that's the title for our today's sermon. Because the big idea is faith kneels boldly when the world demands silence. See, when we're kneeling and we're praying out to God, regardless of what anyone else thinks about it, when we're seeking the face of God and seeking His law and putting it on our heart, we're living out a faithful life. We talked about what can happen last week with compromise. We don't want to compromise our beliefs and what we stand for. We don't want to compromise the thing of God. And in the same instance, when we're kneeling, even though when the world demands us to be silent, when the world demands us to break our trust in God, when we show that we can seek Him no matter what, when we can do these things, what happens is it ends up being a signal to everyone around us. I want to ask you, we know that in his life, that this isn't the first instance. And so I would ask you, how would your life be if it had such intense scrutiny underneath it? How would your life hold up? If you had people looking at you going, okay, where can we find fault? Now, you might say, okay, as long as someone is watching me while I'm at church, I'm good. I have great conversations. I greet everyone. I give hugs. I say hello. But then what happens as soon as we walk through the doors? Do we change as a person? When we get in the car, when we start driving, when we stop at the restaurant, they get our order wrong. We go back to the house. We go to the gas station. We go to the grocery store. We get on social media and we start interacting with folks. We get outside of this environment, further and further from the house of God. What happens to us? If someone was sitting there watching you the entire time, what would they see? Maybe it's good. What about what you watch on TV? What you look up on the internet? What you use your phone for? One of the, way back when I got in trouble while I was in the military, this gentleman, and the reason why I got in trouble is he said, where there's smoke, there's fire. And my quick response to that was, well, if you put a magnifying glass, you'll create a fire too. I kind of got in trouble for that statement. But if you take a magnifying glass and you're looking for something and you're at the right angle and you get the sun into it, you'll start a fire. You'll create the smoke that you're looking for. And if someone's looking, the chances are they're going to find it. Another question I have for you is, are you living consistently? Or are there places that you hide your faith and compromise your character? Because the first point that we're going to talk about today is living with integrity. Now, I've talked about integrity a couple times, but can anyone tell me what my definition of integrity is? I've said it, so this is a test. Do what's right, even if no one's watching. That's a hard thing to do. You walk by and there's $20 on the ground. You pick it up and you put it in your pocket. Someone left that money there. God was trying to bless you. No, if you see someone drop $20, picking it up and giving it to them. Doing the right thing. There's a lot of people in this church that serve in so many different ways. From vacuuming, to mopping, to cleaning, to replacing stuff, to prepping. Like, there's all kinds of stuff that happens in the background and no one ever sees it. But when they approach those things, they don't look at it and go, oh, here I am doing it again. They do it because they have a heart of service not only to God but to this church. And they do it regardless if anyone's watching or if anyone's going to take notice. If they're not even doing it most of the time they do it when no one's even here. So that way they can't get this moment where they go, oh, good job. Thanks for doing that. There's all kinds of those things happening. See, Daniel is an extraordinary example for us of a man and a person who lived a life with unwavering integrity. When you have this world where they're trying to pull him in different directions and trying to bring up these different charges against him, he's living with this moment where he's showing who he serves. Now, in this moment, he's serving underneath King Darius, and King Darius is actually really pleased with him. He wants him to serve, and it's kind of interesting, some of the conversations, how King Darius talks to Daniel. It makes me see that maybe some of those things from his father, because his father's the one who also experienced a lot of these miracles from Daniel. You would expect that what his father saw, that would then in turn impact his son, and that's what we see in his life. But just like anyone else, we can all be manipulated into doing things that we wouldn't want to do. While he's serving, and he has this trustworthiness that's being demonstrated, he starts seeing these things start to arise around him. The higher he rises, the more resistance he faces. You know, maybe this is just me being maybe this is confessional. I need my little booth. But you ever see, like, I don't know if it's social media posts or what, like someone comes up and they give you this great big victory that they just had. They got promoted, they got a raise, they got like a huge paycheck, or they, there's got delivered from some kind of temptation, or their health concern was averted. Like, you ever have any of those moments where that occurs and you feel a little bit of envy and a little bit of jealousy just in that moment? That for whatever reason, whatever they're going through, everything seems like, it's just like, why can't that happen for me? Maybe not, maybe you haven't, but I'm being honest. Like, there's been moments where I've seen something happen and I go, when is it going to be my time? Now, we've talked about it it seems like it's come out in multiple sermons that pride seems to be a root of a lot of our issues when it comes to dealing with God and the people around us. These other officials conspire out of jealousy, desperate to find a fault anywhere they can, and their choice is to do this investigation on him, but they don't find anything. They don't find any kind of corruption. They don't find any kind of mismanagement. So what do they turn towards as their only hope? Well, their only hope is, let's try to catch him in the things that he already does. We could try to take the good things that he does, the very nice things that he does, and try to use this and manipulate it and control it to put himself into trouble. In verse 5, it says, "And then these men said, 'We shall not find any ground for complaint against Daniel unless we find it in connection with the law of his God.'" Church, honestly, if people were going to attack me for my faith, if that's where they're going to choose to attack me, was how well I follow God, that'd be a great thing to me, that they're trying to attack our devotion, our consistency, our courage, our faithfulness. See, if they were able to come up with something else, it means we've already compromised ourselves and put ourselves in a bad position. We see Daniel's integrity is holistic. It's every bit about him. It covers his professional excellence. It also covers his spiritual obedience. He doesn't have a compartmentalized kind of faith. When I say compartmentalized, do y'all know what that means? God, I trust you with my spiritual growth. I trust you with giving me wisdom of a purpose of what to do, not to do. Give me direction on what's right or wrong. Lord, my finances. I don't think you have my retirement in mind. There's some anxiety. Lord, I trust you with my purpose in life, and give me direction. But Lord, I kind of want to ask you 1,000 times, are you sure this is what you want me to do? We compartmentalize. Lord, I'll give you, I'll abstain from all these bad things, and you list out all the bad things, except for this one bad thing. I'll keep this. Lord, I'll be loving and caring to everyone around me except for the people in my home. It always aggravated with my kids. I'm sure everyone's kids are the same way. They'd go somewhere, they'd go to school, and they'd come home, and the teacher would be like, they were such a great student, blah, 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 blah. Or they'd go to someone else's house and be like, your kid is so great. They like washed the dishes and took out the trash. I'm like, they did? Really? No way. That's a shocker to me. They compartmentalized. They get home and they're like, I don't no longer have to do dishes or take out the trash or be nice or show that love and have respect and care for one another. No, they say the meanest things sometimes. See, Daniel doesn't just check his devotion to God at the door. What he does is he continues to show it. He doesn't hide it. He doesn't try to deal with convenience, because sometimes it'd be convenient, especially in his world, what he's living with all these people, to just hide everything he's doing. But his life is to be consistent and transparent. How are we being transparent and consistent with those around us? He didn't live one way in private and another way in public, because even his enemies would see this. If someone's watching us that closely, for me, I feel like it's at work. This is my ministry here, but at work where I interact with people all the time, that's the other ministry field that I'm in. And there are so many people that I interact with each and every day that I know they're not believers. And I know in some ways that they're constantly trying to find a fault in me. And I can tell in conversations, most conversations I can tell where they're trying to go with it ahead of time. Sometimes, though, I don't understand where they're going until it's too late. They've laid the trap. And then I have a decision to either respond into that or to turn away from it. And either way, once you've gotten into a trap with somebody, typically it's either you fall into the trap and you compromise yourself, or you turn away from it and then you weaken your position with them in some way. At least that's what they're going to manipulate the situation for. You see, in our culture today, integrity is often compromised for gain. What can I gain by compromising this situation? What did he have to gain? See, if he was going to be set as the third person in charge of the entire kingdom, so what did he have to lose? Everything. He could have lost everything or gained everything based on his decisions if he was going to follow God or not. He shows us what it means to follow God and live openly and honestly so that the enemies can't discredit any of us if we walk and live in integrity. But for me, the real heart of this entire sermon is in verses 6 through 13. The second point is to kneel anyway. So he has these people coming after him. He has these people trying to trap him, and this is how they do it. So then these high officials and satraps came together in agreement to the king and said to him, O King Darius, live forever. All the high officials of the kingdom, the prefects and the satraps and the counselors and the governors are agreed that the king should establish an ordinance and enforce an injunction that whoever makes a petition to any god or man for 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, establish the injunction and sign the document so that it cannot be changed. According to the law of Medes and the Persians, which cannot be revoked. Therefore, King Darius signed the document and injunction. Now, when Daniel knew that the document had been signed, so he has a knowledge of what they're trying to do. He knows that this document has been signed. He went into his house where he had windows in his upper chamber and open towards Jerusalem. He got down on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before God, as he had previously done. Then these men came by agreement and found Daniel making a petition and plea before his God. And then they came near and said before the king concerning the injunction, O king, did you not sign an injunction that anyone who makes a petition to any god or man within 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions? And the king answered and said, the thing stands fast according to the law of Medes and Persians, which cannot be revoked. Then they answered and said before the king, Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, or the injunction you sign, but makes his petition 3 times a day. There's so much, if I could just spend all this day just in this one part of this passage that we can unpack. So I'm going to try to go through it. Understanding, like when we walk into situations, even when we know it's a trap, when we know someone's trying to manipulate us, when we know that people are trying to find fault in us, that we can walk into that situation with integrity. Then if we can walk in integrity, then that means in that moment we're going to do the right thing when it matters, when they're actually watching. And so he knows that they're going to be watching. Not only are they watching, but they were setting a trap because of how well he was being faithful. They knew that he was going to go to this window that was open towards Jerusalem. They knew that he prays 3 times a day, as it says, as he had done previously. Meaning he's staying in his habit no matter what. They knew where to trap him at. I wonder if we're so consistent in our own walks and what we're doing ourselves. Daniel's response to all this pressure is to do what he's always done. It's to pray. The jealous officials, what they do, they go to King Darius to issue this unbreakable decree. What it is it's a power play designed to silence all the religious devotion except to the king himself, and ultimately to remove Daniel from his high position and put themselves into the power position. Y'all remember all the people that signed together in this agreement? It wasn't just like a little group. It wasn't just these guys over here. What it is you have the satraps, the prefects, the counselors, the governors. All these people found common interest to take Daniel down. No matter how well he was doing and how much it meant for the kingdom that he was managing everything successfully, they all came after him to bring him down. I think ultimately what they were also trying to do is to weaken the king. Because if Daniel's not in charge, if they can take down the king, then they can rise up. And apparently corruption and mismanagement is in their wheelhouse. It's apparently what they're known for because they're trying to find those very things that they know they are guilty of. You know, when people, I'll use, I don't know if the kids use this term anymore. I'll have to, it's not like a fancy term. It's just when someone comes at you, you say that they added you. I feel like they're adding the king. Is there a different term for that? No, still good. But they're coming after the king. They're coming after Daniel in such a way. The stakes couldn't be any higher. But you see, Daniel's reaction is bold, but it's also very simple. To get on his knees and pray anyway, as he always did. No protests, no compromises, no fear-driven silence. He just simply prayed to God as he always did. He chooses faithfulness over safety, obedience over self-preservation. Paul echoes this in Philippians 1, 27 through 28. He says, only let your manner of life be worthy of the gospel, not frightened in anything by your opponents. Your manner in life. It's the Greek word that's used right there. We have 3 words, but it's 1 word in Greek. And the way it's used is like a citizenship. The way we are as citizens of a kingdom or a nation, like there's certain expectations. When I travel anywhere in the world, I know one thing's for certain. As soon as I open this mouth or walk in somewhere, they know I'm American. It's just a simple truth. I cannot hide any bit of me talking. As soon as I talk, or as soon as anyone else talks, most of the time when we just walk in because we wear hats and our clothes look different, you will be sitting down and someone will come up to you and they'll go, "You American?" I'm like, "Yes." "Spy? What? How'd you know I was American?" Like, what are you going to ask me for now? But the manner of life, the way you hold yourself, should represent the kingdom and the king you serve. That's what Paul is saying in Philippians 1:27. And he says he's talking about even when he's absent, to be of one mind, of one spirit, of one accord, and to not be frightened by anything by your opponents. To not fear man. See, Daniel's not shaken by these laws or these threats. His allegiance is to God first. That's who we serve. That's where our obedience is deserved to go. The daily disciplines of prayer, worship, and obedience, all these things should happen before the crisis arises. You know, it's often something happens in our life, that's when we decide that we're going to pray. We say we're faithful, we say we're devoted followers of Christ, we say we're disciples, as Brad talked about. We say we're all these things, but we don't do any of it. We don't read the Bible, we don't pray, we barely have fellowship or communion with other believers. We're completely disconnected from the things of God, and then yet the first crisis that happens in our life, all of a sudden we start praying. We start coming to church. We start asking people for help. All of a sudden, that's the time when those things occur to us. But Daniel, not so much. See, all of those things were disciplines in his life before the event occurred. It's because of those disciplines that he was able to be faithful in the moment. See, some people would think that his faith was formed in the lion's den, but to me it was formed before. It was built on years of kneeling in prayer. Is your prayer life a habit or a habit broken by circumstance? I felt like that was a really good question. Let me ask it one more time. Is your prayer life a habit or a habit broken by circumstance? When the pressure mounts, I would ask you, do you kneel anyway? When the world's wanting you to be silent, do you still get down on your knees and pray? Now, obviously, I'm using it as a metaphor. Some folks are going, I can't kneel, but I still pray. I understand. You get what I'm saying? You might be sitting in a chair, driving to work, driving to church. You might just be walking. However you pray, do you still pray regardless of what's happening? Is your prayer life driven by crisis or consistency? Because I'll tell you that faith grows in quiet disciplines that happen long before a storm enters our life. Because that kind of faith doesn't flinch when things are coming at you. That's our third point. See, he's already prepared. He's been praying. We already know the struggles that he's went through, the things that he saw and experienced, all the way up to this point, 80 years of living faithfully and consistently for the Lord. And in this moment, his faith doesn't flinch against adversity. What happens is Daniel's arrested. He's arrested. And he's left in this moment where it's just him and God in a sense. The final scene is dramatic. It's full of tension. The king is anguished by the law that he's bound by because they trapped the king into the way he wrote this law. He made this decree and made it where he can't change it. And so he has to, according to the law, what's just and right, punish Daniel. You know, there's something else behind that to me. This is full of God's law. Are we 100% in accordance with his law? Some people try. There's a lot that we can't hold up to. And then God gives us grace. He sent his son to sacrifice on our behalf. But his law decrees that if we are sinners, if we sin against God, then judgment has to be rendered. It has to. It can't be changed. It can't be altered. The law has been decreed that if you break the law, then you're guilty and deserve God's full wrath. But what God does is he provides a sacrifice on our behalf. He takes the judgment upon himself for all of us. If you don't think it's about this, I'll read the verses for you, starting in verse 14. And tell me if you don't see something that we see in the New Testament. Then the king, when he had heard these words, was much distressed and set his mind to deliver Daniel. And he labored till sun went down to rescue him. Then these men came by agreement to the king and said to the king, "Know, O king, that it is the law of Medes and Persians that no injunction or ordinance that the king establishes can be changed." Then the king commanded, and Daniel was brought down and cast into the den of lions. And the king declared to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you." And a stone was brought and laid on the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet, with the signet of his lords, that nothing might be changed concerning Daniel. Then the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting, and no diversions were brought to him, and sleep fled from him. It's a moment where the stone is rolled, that the den is sealed. All hope looks like it could be lost. Does this sound familiar to you? The law can't be changed. Daniel is left with the hungry lions. But even in that moment, Darius he can't sleep. He tried delaying it as much as he could to try to rescue Daniel, but he couldn't because the law had to be fulfilled. And even when he delivered him, he made the statement that even his Lord would deliver him from this occasion. A vivid image of danger. A vivid image of abandonment. To me, it's all familiar to me. But Daniel's faith does not waver. And at the break of day, the king arose and went with haste to the den of lions. And as he came near to the den where Daniel was, he cried out in a tone of anguish. The king declared to Daniel, "O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you continually serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions?" Then Daniel said to the king, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths. They have not harmed me, because I was found blameless before him, and also before you, O king, I have done no harm." Then the king was exceedingly glad and commanded that Daniel be taken up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no kind of harm was found on him, because he was trusted with his God, or he had trusted in his God. And the king commanded, and those men who had maliciously accused Daniel were brought and cast into the den of lions, they, their children, and their wives. And before they reached the bottom of the den, the lions overpowered them and broke all their bones in pieces. To me, this is also metaphorical. Could it have literally been them, their kids, and their wives? Absolutely. But I also think we see this happen to people. When we are serving God and we're blameless before him, and people are maliciously attacking us, what they don't realize is their actions have impact on themselves, their children, and their families. It impacts their home. It impacts where they're walking about. That if they have that kind of corruption and malicious intent to the people outside of the world, they're going to do the same things to the people that they love. They're going to grow up learning those behaviors. They're going to learn up putting themselves in a position where they're going to be thrown into the lion's den, torn up by the world that's around them. In a way, they have, even though Daniel was petitioning God, and that's what they were trying to fault him in a way they were petitioning to a different God themselves. And justice had to be rendered to them. God's deliverance is not just a rescue for Daniel's sake, but to me, it's a demonstration of God's glory before everyone to see. It's his control, it's his authority, it's his sovereignty over the situation that Daniel's experiencing. And the king's response shows that a pagan ruler recognizes that there is a living God. He says, he delivers and he rescues. I think even his statement towards the end, he says, he wrote to all the peoples and nations and languages in verse 25, that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree that in all my royal dominion people are to tremble and fear before the God of Daniel, for he is a living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion shall be to the end. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. He who has saved Daniel from the power of the lions. And not just the lions in the den, the lions that were outside, trying to attack him. Church, your lions in your life may not be literal beasts. And sometimes it's not even people trying to maliciously attack you, but the enemy is trying to manipulate you and make you compromise what you believe in. And often, what we find ourselves doing is listening to his words more than listening to God's words. Because we're not praying enough. We're not in his word enough to hear his voice, and the enemy will take a foothold in your life and launch further attacks not only into your life, but into your family around you. These threats and these pressures you face are very real. They're very real to me. They're very real to Daniel. Trusting God doesn't always mean escaping from your danger. But it does mean that he will rescue when the moment comes. What lions are roaring in your life? Whatever that means for you, whatever you're experiencing in this moment, what is that loud roar that you hear? Because there's two different lions that I see in the Bible. You have the Lion of Judah, part of the song that we sung earlier, and you have the lions that are going out trying to destroy you and everything you mean. Trust doesn't mean a guaranteed escape, but what it does is it promises God's presence in that very moment and ultimately that he will rescue you from it. Daniel's faith was forged over a lifetime, not just in that moment. You know, I wish in moments like that we would stand firm and show our faith to be tested appropriately. But I want a lifetime that shows that I've been following God, that it's been forged, that it's been refined, that there's been constantly tension that's happened in my life, and I've shown him that I've been following him. Integrity in daily living, consistency with our prayer in every circumstance, not just the bad ones. Unflinching trust in the heart of the den filled with enemies around us. These are the marks of a faith that endures pressure and glorifies God in everything that we do. Wherever you find yourself today, I hope that you're encouraged. Because I want you to understand this one thing, that no matter what you're experiencing, God is with you, even in that moment. And he honors those who kneel when the world demands silence. I'm going to ask these application questions. The praise team's going to come up and I'm going to pray for us. But as I ask these questions, I want you to understand that it's not meant to shame you. It's not meant to shame me or guilt us. What it's meant for is for us to recognize something, what God's trying to say, and what we can do about it. You know, if we're not living a certain way, let's change those behaviors today. Let's lay them before him. Let's start today by kneeling anyway. Is your life marked by integrity? Is your life marked by integrity? Second question is, how consistent is your prayer life? Even if you have a habit of once a night praying, maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe it's 2 minutes, maybe it's 1 minute, but you consistently do it every single night, you seek his face, then I would encourage you to try it. Just maybe set an alarm on your phone that every time, every night, no matter what you're doing, at that set time, you stop and you offer some kind of prayer to God. What I think you'll find if you do something simple is that you'll find prayer is going to be involved more and more in your life. Where people will come and have a conversation with you, instead of you answering it the right way, sometimes you'll answer, let me pray about it. Really that you're going to go and pray about it. Or maybe you don't respond fully, you'll say, hey, I'll get back to you, because you want to consult the one who is in control over his plans and purposes for our lives. And the third question is, will you trust God even when it costs? Even when it costs. Now, what that cost is, that's between you and God. For some people, it's relationships. Some people, it's everything that they've been striving for in their life. They had a direction. Everything they built up, everything was going in that set direction, and they put their trust in God, and it meant giving up all of that. Just like the rich young ruler, he'd been following the law, he'd been praying, he'd been doing all the sacraments, he'd been doing everything, and the one thing he had to give up was all of his possessions. Because that's where he found his true worth and his value, or at least what he thought was his true worth, was in all of his things. And when Jesus told him to give up those things, he was greatly saddened because he had many things. So we put value into things that give us value. And sometimes giving up those things to have a value that comes from God is immensely more important. So I'm going to pray for us. Again, if you want to respond, coming up to the altar, praying in your seats, going to the back and praying, whatever you feel is most appropriate, I would encourage you to definitely fill out those cards. If you have a prayer request, please put it on the card so that way I can pray for you. And if you don't want me to share it out to a prayer group, just put, hey, this is a private prayer, and I'll keep it where I'm just praying for you. It allows me to be one that is praying consistently for each of you. So thank you for welcoming me into that part of your life. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, it seems like to me that the world is so loud. When I actually have my eyes closed and when I'm actually thinking about all the things that you've done for us, I feel like the enemy is trying to influence every part of my life. From the people that I interact with on a daily basis to people that I call friends. Even in those moments, from the people that love me most, sometimes the enemy will set a foothold and attack me, attack my family, attack what I believe. Lord, I wish it was because I had strong walls and high towers and that I was defending myself, but sometimes, Lord, it happens because I've opened the gates. I've allowed the enemy in. Lord, what I'm praying for today is that you would not only strengthen us, Lord, that you would rescue us from the lion's den, but Lord, when we are faced with adversity and influence from the people around us, Lord, that we would be consistent in our walk. That we would live our life with an integrity. That, Lord, if all else fails, we would find comfort and peace when we kneel down and pray to you. When we seek your voice to guide us, to protect us. Lord, for us to respond to the attacks with your very words you spoke into existence. Lord, because that kind of faith, that kind of obedience, that kind of trust doesn't flinch against adversity. That kind of faith allows us to stand strong and unwavering. As we've talked about over the past few weeks, that it's that kind of faith that makes us unshakable. It's that kind of faith that is unoffendable. Lord, it's that kind of faith that shows the world what we believe in and who we serve. And it's in your name we pray. Amen.